I'm Scott Elmore. It's the 12th of August, 2022, and this is my vlog of daily life in Nicaragua. It is Friday. Welcome to the show. Last night, because I'm recording this on the day of, so I actually have to tell what happened last night, our plan was to go out and get stuff from the grocery store and make pasta for dinner. I had already eaten leftovers that we had, so those were gone. And the kids were like, oh yeah, we just want to try a little bit. They had a little bit, so luckily they had something, but just a tiny bit. They're like, you eat the leftovers and we want fresh food, which I was fine with because I really, really liked the mac and cheese leftovers from the night before, from the 10th. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make pasta. We had picked up all this great new pastas and pasta sauces from the store, so I was prepared for something different, and they were excited about that. I'm partway through cooking, and we ran out of cooking gas. And of course, the kids never want to make decisions about food until about 8 to 9 o'clock at night, so we're cooking pretty late. Luckily, we were a little bit on the early side. This was more like 7:30, so for us, this was kind of a miracle that it happened so early. Still, it's too late to have new gas delivered, so it's easy for us to get tomorrow, but today, we're out of fuel, so I'm not able to cook in the oven, and we don't keep any spares because it's not a big deal. But so for tonight, we pretty much had nothing in the fridge. The grocery stores were about to close, and there was no way for me to cook anything, and the leftovers had already been eaten. So we were we're surely not going to starve, but we would be down to eating pretty random things, like nothing but ramen noodles. And whatever we could find, there really isn't much, a couple granola bars or something. And so really quickly, I'm like, I think La Antigua is open. I know they have fish fingers. Are you guys okay with that? They're like, yeah, actually, that sounds pretty good. I'm like, okay, Chana, jump in the shower, get ready to go. I'm going to take the dogs, walk them so that they're okay, go past La Antigua, see if it's open just to be sure. But it is Thursday night, last night. So hopefully that shouldn't be a problem because it was kind of on the late side. Walked down, saw the lights on, saw people in there. I'm like, okay, I think we're good. Came back. Luciana's so fast in the shower. She was like out and dressed by the time I was back from walking the dogs. So that was it. We just headed out, and the dogs were actually okay. They've gotten used to normally getting like an hour on their own in the morning, and they really don't mind it now. They're comfortable with their surroundings. They know we're not leaving them for very long. They know where they're going to be. It's a closed room, so they don't really hear the fireworks or whatever too much. So it worked out that they were used to that. So we just left them, and the three of us walked down to La Antigua, which is only 2 blocks away. You can, if you're like standing on a stool, you can see its front door from our door. The road goes down just a little bit, so it's a little bit hard. And we went in. They had some of their stuff blocked off, so I went to the bar, and I'm like, is it possible to get a table? And they're like, oh, yeah. And we went over. We got to sit by the fountain and had a really nice dinner. The place was actually, even on Thursday night, this is about 2 or 3 weeks that they've been open now, this place is busy. They are doing extremely good business at that location, and they still have no signs out. Nothing. And it's obvious they shouldn't, because they are so busy that putting a sign out would simply cause people to back up and have a line when most of their tables are busy every night that they're open. They do turn on outside lights. It is really obvious that it's a restaurant for the most part. As you walk by, there's tables outside. So if you're driving by or looking for it or aware that it might be open, if you see it, you're not going to be confused. But if you know nothing about it, you're going to not know what kind of restaurant it is or when they're open or anything. So I think they're doing a good balance of the people who know, and there's enough of them to keep them very busy, and they're getting all their kinks worked out or whatever before they put up a sign or something. So really surprising, but we had a nice time. I had already eaten the leftovers, so I just had a couple beers, and the kids each got fish fingers and French fries. They do great French fries down there. Their fish fingers are not as good as the hotels, but they're pretty good in a completely different style, so it's a nice change of pace. So that was nice. We enjoyed that. And that was pretty much our evening. We hung out there for a while and relaxed, but we didn't want to stay too long because the kids were full. Like, they couldn't even finish their meals. They're really good-sized meals, as is common here, and the dogs were alone. So came back. The kids were in the middle of watching some shows on their own, so I'm like, I've got stuff to do. I'll go work on video editing, and you guys just wrap up your shows, no big deal. So they did that. They watched some shows, and then when they were done with that and kind of ready to wind down for the night, I wrapped up my work, came over, and Lisa and I watched more of Arrested Development, which we have been binging. We are almost through the first season already. She really enjoys it. Dominica's like, that is so her humor. That is totally her type of show. So that's been nice, because that's a show I really like, and it's cool being able to share those things with her. And there aren't that many sitcoms and stuff from the U.S. that we're able to access, whether we're here or in the U.S. Like, there's just for some reason, sitcoms seem like the kind of thing that would be very accessible. You'd think like a Netflix would have like 40 of them. And in reality, it's really hard to find classics that you want to watch for whatever reason. And there's only just a sprinkling of them. So when they're available, you really want to take advantage of that. Now today is Friday. It is bright and sunny for the most part. We've had a little bit of cloud cover here and there. I see a little bit of gray. For the most part, it is a hot, bright day. We had the house clean today, so there's a lot going on with that. There's just busy day. So Paul's been running around doing errands. Dominica's at the beach managing the hotel. The kids have been managing the dogs because the house is being cleaned. So they've got to maneuver the cat into one room and the dogs into another and open and close things and do all this stuff while the house is being cleaned. So that's always a bit of an adventure. And I have had a lot of work to do, but not a crazy amount. I had some meetings and things that are scheduled. And so I'm trying to balance all that while getting videos done. Valentina is traveling next week, and not just like going on a little mini road trip somewhere. She's heading to Cancun and then off to Argentina. And of course, she does the thumbnails and graphic stuff for this and other channels. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge as we try to work out our workflow with her being in Argentina for a while. But how exciting for her. One of my top destinations that I want to go to. Argentina is supposed to be so amazing and so different from other places that you would be, being so far south, so European, while being Latin America. It's a neat, interesting mix that you really don't get in that way anywhere else. Of course, every country is unique, but some are a bit more unique than others, if you know what I mean. So overall, it is a pretty relaxed day, I want to say. We don't have any huge disasters going on, no huge projects going on, and it's a good wrapping up of the week. I do have some projects I have to do today. I'm deploying some new servers. I have some customer work that needs my attention. I have a bunch of video work that I'm trying to get done before it's too late. And then the cool things we have going on tomorrow in the afternoon, I keep saying morning, but it's actually 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We are doing the grand opening of Huete Vet, which is our new veterinary clinic up in Chinandega. So I'm going to try to be there for that. I don't know if anyone's going with me or not, but I'm going to go and hang out for several hours and be there for all the inaugural activities, which is going to be very cool. I'm certainly going to take video. This is an opportunity for me to bring you guys along to a city I don't go to very often and an opening of a new business, which is really neat and a completely different kind of business than anything we've done before. So I'm really excited about that. This is going to be a good opportunity. And then I don't know how long I'm going to be staying in Chinandega tomorrow. I don't know if I'm just going to go up, do that, and catch the bus back, or if I'm going to hang out and do a bunch of things. I don't know if friends are going to drive me back, so maybe I'll catch a ride with them at some point. I just have no idea. And it's possible that I will stay there for part of the weekend. But on Sunday, there is a festival here in Leon, and the kids want to go. So even if I do stay in Chinandega, I got to get back pretty early because both girls are not excited about it, but they are interested in going to see what's going on downtown Leon on Sunday because it is a Leon festival. It is a religious festival, and there's a big one on December 7th where, and I never get the name right, but the volcano at Cerro Negro was about to erupt, and there was a big religious event, and they prayed to the Virgin Mary, and the volcano did not erupt, and they promised to hold a big festival in her honor because of that. And this festival is the little of whatever that festival is. At some point, the volcano did it again, and they did the same thing again, and then they throw her a smaller festival for protecting them from the volcano a second time. So I don't know what to expect at that festival, but I know a lot of people are going. Our lawyer said, I go out and bring my kids, like it's a thing. But there should be music and food and vendors and stuff, and it's all walking distance from here, so we're going to check that out. Bring you guys along, I hope, and should be fun as well. So this weekend, I'm hoping, is going to be pretty cool for the channel because there's actually things going on. Coming up in another week after that, I believe that is, in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we have a beach volleyball competition at Las Peñitas. That's going to be at the Simple Beach Lodge, the Beach Bar and Grill, and Simple Surf Complex next to Playa Roca. So if any of you are here in Nicaragua and want to go out to the beach, I'm going to put that up on the screen so you can see those details. And I'll try to post some links to that, but it's a volleyball competition, beach volleyball competition, and a bunch of the businesses on the beach and some of the individuals are sporting teams that will be competing. And yes, there are prizes, so it should be pretty neat. Just head near Playa Roca, and just to the, if you're looking at it, just to the left are the 3 businesses that are hosting there, and you can check them out also at On to Surf, which is the surf school there. If you're looking at it from the beach, you'll see the Simple and On to Surf. And then on the first weekend in September coming up is the Corn Festival, the Festival de Maíz in Matagalpa. I mentioned this one to the girls, and both of them they literally said, they texted me, we both say absolutely. So they're looking forward to that. I have no idea what about that is drawing them in so much that they're so excited, but I think it's going to be really cool. One, I like corn and corn products, which I think is the big draw. Both of them like food, and corn is a big thing that both of them like to eat. And I'm a big fan of Matagalpa, so I'm looking forward to a trip to Matagalpa and spending the weekend up there. I want to spend the night and hang out and do touristy stuff in Matagalpa and go see things, and hopefully do more than just the Festival de Maíz, but that alone should be pretty fun. It's a good-sized city with lots of restaurants, museums, and activities, both in the city and in its area, and we have friends up there that I'm sure we will go visit. So I'm looking forward to that as a fun upcoming activity. So that's in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Those are 3 big things we have going on, or 4 kind of. 2 things this weekend. I think next weekend is a pass weekend that we don't have any festivals to be at. I believe I am probably going to be in Managua at some point during that weekend, but I'm not sure. May just be hanging out here in Leon. And then the weekend after that is the beach volleyball tournament, and then the weekend after that is the Festival of Corn in Matagalpa, which will be really cool to bring you guys to, because I have only done a few minutes of filming in Matagalpa on the channel, and going up for an entire weekend, I'll be able to get a lot of stuff, and so that should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. That's all that we have going on here. I'm now going to talk a little bit about some video game stuff, so if this is not what you're interested in, this is where you can leave us. But please remember to like and subscribe, put comments below, because that helps us and it helps me connect with you. And remember to share on social media. Remember, that's about the only way I have to get the word out. So with your help, you can really help grow the channel. And I know a lot of you have, and it's very noticeable as the channel grows. All right, so recently on the show, I talked about twice video games, why I like them so much for my kids, how important they are, why I think that they're an important literary tradition. I'm also thinking about starting a second video game channel that's just for me, talking about literary gaming, because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I want that opportunity to kind of show games in that light. But some people had questions about games that I play with the kids, or games that I think are really important. And so I'm cherry picking 3 games that I want to just talk about now on this channel to give you guys an idea of the kinds of games and things that I'm thinking of. Game number 1, and this is one that we've already done on Loaf Gaming, my gaming channel. The videos of it are not very good. The one that's upcoming, the finale, episode 6 of that, which should be out in about a week or 2, is actually quite good, I think, but the first ones are pretty bad. We hadn't figured out the microphone and stuff, so if you watch those, please be kind. Is the Nancy Drew series. Now, this series started in about 1998 and is still going today, more or less. The last several years, the series really petered out. The game maker is struggling very heavily and does not seem to have been able to figure out how to adapt to the modern gaming era, and so they're having some problems there. But altogether, there's about 34 games in the series, so I realize I said a game, but it's really a game series, but they're all essentially an extension of the same game. And in this series, you play the eponymous character Nancy Drew from the Nancy Drew novels, and for all intents and purposes, the games are just interactive versions of the traditional novels. In many cases, they have the same titles, they follow the same plots. Of course, things had to be modified because the originals were not intended to be used as interactive literature. They were not meant to be puzzles or games. And the originals were updated multiple times, even in book form, because they fell out of date and lost context with their audience. And so the games are updated quite a bit, even from the novelizations, but they still are very much the books in an interactive literary form. And I like this because they've done such a good job at taking books and keeping the spirit of them while making it interactive, engaging, fun, educational. It's really a wonderful adaptation of something that was a different type of literature. We practically recognize Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys as almost its own genre, the Boxcar Children and all those, the Sugar Creek Gang. And by taking those, and the Hardy Boys are involved in this game series as well, and adapting them into a video game that lends itself very well to family gaming. This is a game series that is very easy for us, at least. My eldest daughter tends to control the game. My youngest tends to help solve puzzles, and I join them, and we just all sit and play together. And we get the story, and we discuss what's going on, and we talk about, who do we think did it? What's the mystery? What's going to happen? How do we solve the puzzle? It's something we can all do together, and it has some great literary experiences, as it really is just adapting the novel. And it also has good puzzles, so it's good for brain development in that way. They tend to teach a different thing in each one. My favorite, I think, as an example, is Trail of the Twister. Not quite sure. And in that one, throughout the game, there's a whole bunch of education about tornado safety. They talk about ratings of tornadoes, how to identify them, what to do, all that kind of stuff. You learn a lot about tornadoes during the course of the game. Another one, they teach about carbon monoxide poisoning and looking for the symptoms and what the dangers are and those kinds of things. They build them into the story, so you naturally are learning more about the world simply by playing the games. I find that great. It's a wonderful educational tool and makes things that most children would just skip over on their own into something that they really enjoy learning about. And there's a little bit of that in almost every game. So that, I think, is a really great example. And the game is played, you have a first-person perspective, but it's not full 3D. In most cases, like you would expect in games today, it is static images with a little bit of animation, and you simply move from scene to scene as the character in the first person. You have an inventory, you have a notebook, and different things. The graphics are not the best, the music is not the best, the voice acting is okay. That you get a really good experience that I think is perfect for a family to sit around, because when you're playing a full 3D game and you have to deal with all the motion, it's a lot more difficult for people who aren't holding the controller because they're not connected to the head movements. And so this style of game of Nancy Drew, I think, really lends itself to the family grouping, sitting around watching it, participating together, because what's on the screen remains a bit more static than in many more modern games, which simply expect there to be a single audience member who is controlling it. When you do that, when you move the joystick and your head moves, you naturally start to, in the same way in a car, the driver is less likely to get motion sick than the passengers because they're connected to the steering wheel and they know what they're about to do, or they're connected to it as they do it. They're not just being thrown around. Same thing happens in 3D games. The second game that I want to talk about is Broken Age. Broken Age, much like Nancy Drew, has a physical interface that lends itself to family gaming. Now, I didn't bring this topic up for the purpose of family gaming, but I'm combining the importance of the literary experience, which I talked about in the other video, and having children and games that I want children to engage with, and to have a message and are an important teaching tool, but also an important literary tool. But I'm adding to that to some degree. This is something that we as a family are able to do, and that adds another aspect of the dynamic that we have for video gaming as a family with children. And so with Broken Age, this is a more traditional point-and-click adventure. So it's 2D, characters walk around on the screen, you tell them where to go. So you're looking at everything in a third person, and it is a beautiful, hand-drawn, absolutely gorgeous art style. If you look at it or start playing it, you'll immediately have this, wow, I am playing in a work of art. Like, someone really had some serious art direction on this. The music, the sound, everything is meticulous. The story is absolutely fantastic. I don't want to tell anything about it because it would have to give so much away. But it is an amazing bit of literature, and it is not based on a novel, so you're getting a completely unique literary experience with it, and told in a way with two completely different storylines that intertwine at different points. Completely fantastic. We are going to be playing that on Loaf Gaming. It is possibly Liesel's favorite game, certainly her most played game. It's one that we've really connected with our children over the years. It's not super long. It is made by some industry heavyweights who were using it as kind of a comeback title after they had been away for some time. And the voice acting in it is second to none. So many who's who of Hollywood came out to voice the characters in this story. It's absolutely fantastic. It's hard to overstate how much I recommend Broken Age as an example of literary excellence within the video game genre. And it has great interactivity. It has great storytelling. It has great art. Everything, every aspect of it comes together to be a great example of every aspect of interactive storytelling. And I think that's important, that this is a work of art from anybody's perspective: the writers, the artists, the musicians, the voice actors, the storytellers. And as a player, it is so engaging and exciting and fun. And I hope that more games like that come out from Double Fine Studios, because they clearly have so much potential to make games that are so excellent in that way. They have made other games. This specific genre with their own IP, I think, is something that's very valuable. Not necessarily another game in that universe. That is very much a one-shot universe type game. But they have a lot of potential using the same mechanisms that they use to make that game, to make more in the future. And the last game or game series that I want to talk about in this particular example is Mass Effect. This is absolutely different than the other two. And in fact, all three of these games that I'm mentioning have essentially nothing in common. They come from different eras. They use different styles. They use different gameplay. They don't feel anything alike. And exploring gaming and the interactive literary experience through these three different games will give you a very broad range and understanding of what's possible in video games. And of course, this doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, but these are three titles or series that are truly groundbreaking and important and worth exploring in any literary context. So Mass Effect. Mass Effect is a sci-fi in the classic tradition, and as a story, it would compete with the best of the Star Trek shows or Asimov's Foundation. Like, this is truly groundbreaking science fiction in a pure science fiction literary experience, but it is also a really amazing example of first-person role-playing game storytelling within the video game genre. It also incorporates some elements that are not completely unique, but I think are done in a way that are pretty astounding. So a little bit about the series. First of all, it is an action RPG. So it's very, very first person, and it feels like a first person shooter, but it is also a role-playing game. So it is not as much action as, say, a Call of Duty game might be, but it does give a little bit of that feel. And action games have an advantage that they keep you on the edge of your seat. It is very hard to become disengaged during an action game. So they make you more involved and more emotionally connected even when there's no particular story going on. Things like exploring a ravine or waiting for someone to pounce on you from above, or a fight that was very, very difficult. Those things become more emotionally attached to you, rather than my character was in danger, but the game just had me, select, yes, I'm going to have this fight, and it was close, but it's always the same outcome. With an action game like Mass Effect, if you aren't paying attention and doing, a really good job, your characters are going to die, and it's going to change the outcome of the game, or you're going to have to do it again. And that kind of stuff can be really engaging. It also, in some ways, makes it very difficult. Someone who's trying to game very casually may find the game a little bit unapproachable because of that. But if you're like me, I simply turn my difficulty settings all the way down. So it still requires that I pay attention and react, but it does not make the game insurmountable because I am not an action gamer in any way. I think the balance works really well for a lot of people. It is first person, so you're really taking on the role of the main character. It is a trilogy, so Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. It is a single story, single game, just split into three parts. That way they were able to develop it over a number of years. They're basically 3 chapters to the story. You want to play all 3 of them, and each one takes about 35 hours. So as an individual game, this is many, many times larger than the other games we were talking about. A Nancy Drew adventure could be played through in about 2 hours, and in a normal gamer's kind of approach is going to take about 5 to 6 is my experience. Something like Broken Age can be speed run, I think, in like under an hour, but most people playing it are going to be looking at more in that 6 to 10 hour range because it does have some difficult puzzles, and you are going to want to spend some time simply interacting with the environment. Mass Effect is roughly 33 to 35 hours per chapter for a total of around 100 to 110 hours for the gameplay. That's intense. But I also find that this is an important aspect of video games, that it's easy to make or relatively approachable to make a game that has a huge amount of time and resources invested in it as the player. And that gives you time to get to know the characters and their game world, explore areas, and really become attached to it. And that's something that Mass Effect does extremely well. Its sibling series, Dragon Age, actually takes that to a whole new level. They have even more installments, and those installments can top 90 hours each. And so when you're looking at the same thing, instead of 100 plus hours, you're looking at 300 plus hours, which is pretty intense. Something that they did in the Mass Effect series that I found really intriguing is they actually mixed it with regular novels. And you can skip the novels, but they provide an important part of the overall story. Now, if you're simply a gamer and you just want a video game to fly through more or less and get the achievements and move on, Mass Effect will allow for that. Simply skip the novels. And most people playing the game are not even aware of the novels. But if you research and know where the novels are, I get them on Audible, but you can go pick them up at Amazon, whatever. And when you're playing the game, each of the chapters of the game, so Mass Effect 1 has a novel that's meant to come before it. The idea is that you're going to read the novel and then play the game, and then you read another novel, play the next game, read another novel, play the next game. The way that it's designed, the novels have the detailed lives and adventures that are referenced in the main game. So the secondary characters and backstory is created and really, really detailed within these novels. And so for me, I like to listen to them in the car, get really into the game world, really think about these characters and this history. And then when I play the game, I start meeting those people and interacting with them, and I understand their characters that much better. And it really makes the game world so much deeper and more interesting when sometimes even like you're running through a lab and a random character comes up and has one line in the game to you, and you're like, wait a minute, I know that name. That's the person who was at this thing and did that. And it's like really connects. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into putting this rich environment together. And I thought that was a really novel approach, pun not intended, to make the game deeper, because there's some parts of the story that are simply better to tell not interactively and other parts that are better to be interactive. Now, in a similar vein, Skyrim, for example, will take works of literature and sprinkle them throughout the game itself. You're exploring a cave and you come upon a bookshelf, pull a book off the shelf, and there's a book you can read there inside the game world. And I like that. That's interesting. And for people who really want to invest into a single game, into a single story really deeply, it lets you do so. And it's all within the original media that you purchased. You're not going out and getting something separate. So that works pretty well. And I like that. But it's also very difficult to read in that way. The video game itself is not a novel. Sometimes it's nice to have a paper novel in your hands or something on your Kindle or something you can listen to in the car, and having a traditional book makes more sense. And the length of the novels of Mass Effect is long. They're full-length novels, normal, everyday novels, whereas in Skyrim there may be many of them, but they tend to be relatively short because no one's going to sit at their video game flipping the pages on a digital book on the screen for any length of time. It's simply awkward. Beyond that, Mass Effect tells one of the greatest stories in science fiction. Personally, I would put it with only Foundation as a true peer. I like it better than anything in Star Wars or Star Trek. It is so well done. It is so intense. It's so edge of your seat. And it's so personal in the way that it is approached. I really, really appreciate Mass Effect from that aspect. And the game world is beautiful and rich. I enjoy the artwork, the architecture. I actually like exploring the spaces within the game because there's so much interior design and thought has gone into characters and layouts and locations and all those kinds of things. There's just a lot of detail in a really well told story, and there's so many side stories and intricate. You don't feel like you're in a linear story to any great degree. You're really exploring a complex game world with a lot of different characters, and there's a lot of different outcomes, not just to the final game, but in the interim. You can interact with your game world in a lot of interesting ways, and I think that Mass Effect is a really great example. Not as extreme as Skyrim, but a great example of a game where you have a lot of influence on your world and you're able to take advantage of the interactivity and character development to a very great degree. So putting these three together, you have three great examples of completely different video games that take wholly different approaches to storytelling, but all of them, I think, are groundbreaking, amazing literary titles that if you approach them as a work of literature instead of as a way to kill some time when you want to play a game, I think you will find that they have a lot to offer, not just as an adult playing a game, but as a way to engage as a family, as a way to provide children with an excellent literary experience that honestly I feel surpasses nearly any traditional literature that I read as a child, and I read a lot of excellent things. And of course, I love novels like Little Men and Little Women, Foundation, I've mentioned several times, Watership Down, 1984, Grapes of Wrath, all books that I read when I was young, and all have a lot of meaning to me and are very important, and I appreciate literature, but none of them do I feel compete with these specific games and many others as far as just how good they really are as a mode of literature. These games tell such a deep story and engage you so much. You're so much more likely to remember. You're so much more likely to identify and empathize with the characters. So much more likely to care about the characters because you are part of the story. I highly recommend checking these out and looking into other titles. And I'm seriously considering starting a literary gaming channel so we can sit down and talk about specifically these kinds of things. And for example, very recently, Liesel, my eldest, and I played The Flower Collectors, which is a relatively short first-person 3D game about a disabled cop who is living in the center of Barcelona near the end of the Franco regime in Spain, and you're dealing with what it's like to have lived under the regime, be there during the regime change, look back at memories of the Civil War, and deal with characters who often had lost or are about to lose loved ones based on your former interaction working for the police force under Franco. And it was a really, really deep story with a lot of importance as far as telling a historical event. My daughter was not familiar with Franco and the Civil War in Spain, even though we have lived in Spain, but it was so distant in time, but recent enough that many people who are alive today were alive at that time, and many things are still going on in Spain because of the Franco period, right? Barcelona is currently potentially looking to split from Spain or be granted greater autonomy, and the Catalonian language is something that my daughters are familiar with, not familiar as in they can speak it, but familiar with hearing it because we have spent a bit of time in Catalonia, and it's an area that we love, and this is something that touches so close to home. And that's just a great example of a game that almost no one talks about. We don't think about video games being like this, and yet it's an amazing vehicle for conveying literary and historical information and just teaching us about the world and teaching us about ourselves and how we interact with the world when we are put into those situations. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. See all of you tomorrow.